Please reserve judgment regarding my situation until you've heard my entire story. I find myself at a crossroads, grappling with the challenging question of whether there is a possibility to save my 19-year marriage or if my relationship with my husband has reached a point of irreparability. I am a 38-year-old woman, and for the sake of this account, I will refer to myself as Francine. My husband, who I'll call Ree, is 44. We entered into marriage when I was only 19, shortly after giving birth to our daughter, whom we'll name Libby. Libby is now 19 years old, and almost a year later, our son, who I will refer to as Craig, was born. Both of our children are currently attending the same college, which is located about 5 hours away from our home. Despite the challenges of marrying young while balancing the responsibilities of parenthood, Ree and I managed to build a stable and fulfilling life together. From the outset, we made a solid team, supporting each other through thick and thin. Ree has always been an exceptional provider, securing a well-paying job that allowed us to establish financial security. Even during the earlier years of our marriage when we had limited resources and responsibilities, we thrived together. I worked 3 days a week, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, while Ree took charge of walking our dog during his lunch breaks. On weekends, we both enjoyed spending time together with our pet, creating cherished family moments. We have been able to purchase our own home, maintain a decent savings account, and live a life that many would consider enviable. Our family life was stable and rich with shared experiences, forming a bond that I believed was unbreakable. However, my world took a turn when I became involved with a person whose influence would lead me astray. It began innocently enough at the local dog park, where we often took our beloved canine companion. On one of my days off, I met a man named Leonard, who was 37 years old, and our dogs hit it off immediately. He mentioned that he had seen me at the park before, although I had never noticed him. This chance meeting sparked a series of encounters. Each time I visited the park, Leonard was there, and our interactions gradually evolved into casual conversations. We bonded over our shared love for dogs, and nothing inappropriate transpired during those early exchanges. One evening, while having dinner with my husband, I brought up my conversations with Leonard at the dog park. I asked Ree if he had ever seen Leonard there, and he replied that he hadn't. I told him that our dogs had become friends, and we shared a light-hearted laugh about it before the topic was dropped. Time moved on, but the dynamics of my relationship with Leonard began to shift around 2 months ago. During one of our conversations at the park, Leonard mentioned that he lived in a nearby luxury apartment complex, just a quarter of a mile from the park and about half a mile from our home. I casually remarked about how appealing the apartments looked from the outside and asked him about their interiors, mentioning a friend who was considering renting there. This conversation took an unexpected turn when Leonard suggested that I come to his apartment to take a look and snap some photos for my friend. Although I had reservations and knew I should have declined his invitation, I reluctantly agreed. Once I entered Leonard's apartment, I immediately sensed that I had crossed a boundary that I should have respected. He showed me around his elegantly furnished space, and I stayed for about 10 minutes, feeling increasingly aware of my decision's inappropriateness. After thanking him for the tour, I mentioned that I needed to return home. He asked if I would be back at the park the following Tuesday, and I confirmed that I would indeed be there, marking the beginning of a path that I regretfully would follow. That night, upon returning home, instead of confessing to Ree about my visit to Leonard, I attempted to cover my tracks by being more attentive to my husband. I went out of my way to prepare an exquisite dinner and shared a cozy evening with him, culminating in a sense of normalcy as we retired to our bedroom together. It was a delightful evening, but it only masked the brewing storm within me. The following Tuesday, I met Leonard at the park once again, and our conversation extended to nearly 2 hours. As we talked, I felt compelled to express that we needed to step back from our friendship, recognizing that we had ventured into inappropriate territory. Leonard, however, acknowledged my concerns but insisted that it felt so right between us and that the chemistry we shared was undeniable. In that moment, I should have firmly retracted and put an end to our interactions, but instead, I regrettably found myself agreeing with him, complicating my situation even further. Things escalated rapidly from that point onward. The following Tuesday, I found myself at Leonard's apartment for the afternoon, and what began as a casual meeting soon turned into a surprisingly intimate encounter. To my astonishment, instead of being overwhelmed with guilt or remorse for my actions, I felt a surge of desire and passion for my husband. That night, we shared a wonderful experience together, filled with laughter and affection, seemingly oblivious to the growing darkness that loomed over our relationship. Looking back on that time, I am now filled with a deep sense of disgust and regret for what transpired. However, honesty compels me to admit that Leonard and I continued our rendezvous at his apartment every Tuesday and Thursday for nearly 2 months until my life took a dramatic turn this past Friday, the day my reality shattered. I should have been more perceptive to the changes in my husband's demeanor. 2 weeks prior, I noticed a shift in his behavior, yet I was so ensnared in the affair that I either failed to recognize it or simply did not care. During that period, my husband's behavior became detached. He began responding to my inquiries with short, clipped answers and avoided engaging in meaningful conversation. More troubling was his sudden disinterest in intimacy. He turned down my advances multiple times and no longer initiated any physical affection. His work habits shifted as well. He frequently worked late, returning home well after 8 p.m. He attributed his absences to a major presentation that required their attention, claiming he and his colleagues were engrossed in the project and dining on takeout meals at the office. While I understood that significant projects could occasionally demand extra time, it was peculiar for this to persist for 2 consecutive weeks. When I pressed him for clarification, he assured me it was a highly confidential matter that would wrap up on Friday. I accepted his explanation, feeling a sense of relief at the thought of my affectionate husband returning soon, as he promised an emotionally charged weekend ahead. However, the emotions I experienced on that fateful Friday were far from what I had anticipated. Upon arriving home, I discovered a large manila envelope taped to the door, bearing my name. When I opened it, my heart sank as I found numerous pages outlining the messages exchanged between Leonard and me on the fake Facebook accounts we had created for our clandestine conversations. As I read through those messages, tears streamed down my face, and I struggled to catch my breath. The weight of the situation felt almost suffocating, and I contemplated calling emergency services due to the overwhelming nature of my emotions. In a panic, I tossed the envelope to the floor and began pacing around the house, consumed by uncertainty. Who could have left this envelope at my door? Was it Leonard, my husband, or perhaps someone else entirely? The answer to my questions became painfully clear as I entered the bedroom. There, in the center of our bed, sat a white gift box elegantly adorned with a large red bow and a card tag that had my name in the to line and my husband's name in the from line. My heart raced as I anxiously removed the bow and opened the box, only to be met with the devastating sight of divorce papers. It was in that moment I realized that my world had completely fallen apart. Overwhelmed, I collapsed onto the bed, sobbing uncontrollably into a pillow, the weight of my choices crashing down upon me. After what felt like an eternity of struggling with my thoughts and rehearsing what I would say to my husband, I finally mustered the courage to call him. Yet, my attempts were met with silence. I tried calling multiple times, but he offered no response. In desperation, I turned to texting him, but my messages remained unanswered. Anxiety coursed through me as I paced the house, grappling with how to confront this seemingly insurmountable situation. I then reached out to my daughter and son, hoping they might have some insight, but they too were unreachable, which was unsettling and unusual. Just when I thought things couldn't spiral further out of control, I received a text from my husband. It bore the weight of devastation, as he informed me that he was aware of everything, our children were informed, and so was my extended family. He disclosed that he had moved out and signed a lease for an apartment, adding that I would soon hear from his attorney. The final words of his message cut me to the core: enjoy your new life with Leonard. Reading his message sent me into an emotional tailspin, and I wept for hours. My only brief respite came when I answered a call from my mother, but instead of the comfort I desperately sought, she unleashed a tirade of anger and blame, not allowing me a single word of explanation. When she abruptly hung up, I found myself trying to call her back, but she refused to answer, leaving me drowning in isolation and despair, reflecting on the choices that led me to this moment. I reached out to my father, apprehensive yet hopeful for a moment of connection. When I asked to speak with my mother, he told me bluntly that she had nothing more to say to me at that moment. His tone conveyed a depth of disappointment that I had never been prepared to confront. He went on to articulate his feelings of shame towards me, stating that he never imagined his own daughter could engage in such actions. Each word felt like daggers piercing through me, and I was left shattered, unable to hold back the tears that streamed down my face. My apologies flowed out in a desperate attempt to express my regret, but my father remained silent, absorbing my emotional turmoil without interruption. Once I had finished pouring my heart out to him, he finally broke his silence and advised me to compose myself and strive for something better in the future. I managed to respond with a simple, "Okay, Daddy, I will," knowing full well that our conversation was drawing to a close. At that moment, I felt a profound humiliation wash over me, rendering me unfit to confide in friends or even other family members. I retreated to my bedroom, seeking solace in solitude as I cried alone, grappling with the consequences of my actions. The need to communicate with Leonard became imperative, both to inform him of the end of our relationship and to seek some form of comfort during this painful period. With shaky hands, I dialed his number. As soon as he picked up, he questioned my choice of using my phone instead of our covert Facebook accounts, a reminder of the deceit that had characterized our connection. I responded candidly, explaining that my husband had discovered our affair and was now pursuing a divorce. Leonard's immediate reaction was a weary, "Oh no, he knows." When I expressed my uncertainty about how my husband found out, Leonard probed further, asking if it was possible my husband had stumbled upon my Facebook account. I speculated that this must be how he learned the truth. Leonard then inquired if my husband knew who he was, to which I confirmed that he did. My husband had indeed mentioned Leonard by name in a text message I had received. This revelation seemed to trigger a wave of panic in Leonard. He unleashed a string of expletives, shouting the F-word so loudly that it startled his dog into barking. After he regained composure, he said, "Okay, I'm sorry this happened, but you were careless. Let's sever all ties, delete our accounts and phone numbers. Hopefully, you can salvage your marriage. Please don't contact me again." I was taken aback, feeling a surge of both surprise and disgust at his lack of accountability. His words felt like a dismissal, and I could only respond with a meek, "Okay." There were no apologies for the destruction of my marriage, no questions about how he could make amends, nor any expressions of gratitude for the time we had shared. Instead, it was purely a conversation about self-preservation from a person who had shown his true colors in this moment of crisis. The realization of my foolishness in cheating on Ray, especially with someone as unappealing as Leonard, struck me with a heavy blow. As I sit here writing at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, the weight of my emotional state is palpable. I have taken the entire week off from work with the singular intention of trying to communicate with my husband and children. My goal is to apologize sincerely and work towards healing and moving forward. I find myself grappling with feelings of isolation, pondering whether anyone can offer advice on what steps to take next. My spirit feels crushed, and I am left feeling utterly alone. The fallout from my actions has resulted in the loss of everything that mattered to me, except for my dog. I can't shake the feeling of being cut off so abruptly by my husband. Ray has distanced himself, effectively shutting me out of his life and initiating divorce proceedings over what I acknowledge to be a single, foolish mistake. It feels excessively harsh to me. Update: I am returning here because I am in dire need of an outlet for the intense pain I am currently enduring. I recently had a conversation with my children while they were on their way back to town after 3 days of ignoring my calls and texts. I had held on to hope that they were reaching out to talk and allow me the chance to apologize. Unfortunately, what I received instead was a relentless barrage of insults, filled with disrespect and hurtful names that had never crossed their lips before. Ely, in particular, seemed to take cues from Libby, who was exceptionally harsh. In the midst of their verbal onslaught, I maintained my composure and apologized, attempting to explain that I had manipulated Leonard and felt victimized by his actions. I reminded them of the years I had spent being a good mother and a devoted wife to their father before this unfortunate incident. However, my daughter insisted that, while I may have once been a great mother, I had transformed into the worst. The call concluded with Libby stating that she and her brother would be spending the weekend with their father, reinforcing the finality of their words by stating that I should not expect to see them at all. The reality of my situation has left me feeling shattered, and the road ahead looks daunting. This situation has brought me deep sadness, particularly because the day in question is Mother's Day, a holiday that has always held special significance for me. In previous years, my husband and children would go out of their way to create a heartfelt celebration, filled with love and thoughtful gestures that made me feel cherished. However, this year, the reality is that I will find myself spending the day alone, accompanied only by my dog, whose unconditional love remains my sole source of comfort. I recognize that much of what Libby and Craig are experiencing stems from the immediate anger that often follows feelings of betrayal. Despite my understanding, I cannot shake the awful feelings regarding their reactions to the situation. I do not seek sympathy, rather, I yearn for a few uplifting words that can help me navigate through this challenging time. For those who have reached out with messages of support, I am truly grateful. Your kindness has brought me genuine solace, and I appreciate it more than words can convey. I will endeavor to provide updates as I can. In my second update, I wanted to share some developments, especially since I have received numerous inquiries regarding my situation. For the past 2 weeks, I have been attending individual counseling, which has proven to be quite beneficial for me. My counselor is an exceptional woman who has instilled in me the courage to continue moving forward despite the difficult circumstances. She has explained that, at this stage, I have done everything possible to repair the relationships with my family. The most sensible course of action now is to step back and allow them the space they need. If they choose to return, it will demonstrate that our connections were built on love. If they do not come back, it may indicate that their love was never genuine. Alongside this, she has recommended that I try transcendental meditation, which I began last week. This practice has introduced a sense of peace and tranquility into my life, and I feel a heightened sense of control over my thoughts and emotions than I have ever experienced before. That is the current state of affairs in my life, and I will keep everyone informed with further updates if necessary. In my next communication, I hope to share the joyous news that my husband and children have welcomed me back, and that we have once again reunited as a happy family. For the third update, after a considerable pause, I return with both positive and negative developments to share. A couple of weeks following my last message, I received unexpected news. I discovered that I was pregnant. At 38 years old, after more than 15 years of trying to conceive a third child, this revelation came as both a shock and an overwhelming joy. The thought of welcoming a baby into my life was exhilarating, but I was also consumed by fear at the possibility that this child might belong to Leonard. This realization sent me spiraling into a state of panic. My instinct was to share the news with Ree. However, I understood that if I revealed the pregnancy and the baby ultimately turned out not to be his, it could cost me my relationship with him forever. Conversely, if it was indeed Leonard's child, I faced the moral dilemma of whether or not to proceed with the pregnancy. Given that Ree is staunchly opposed to such procedures, I couldn't risk him finding out if I chose to terminate the pregnancy. To navigate this complicated situation, I reached out to a DNA clinic to inquire about the possibility of conducting a prenatal DNA test without needing a sample from the father. The lab confirmed that it could be done, though it would require specific other bodily samples that I did not possess. The only potential sample I could gather was hair follicles, and while I managed to find a few on my husband's brush, they were insufficient for a complete analysis, leaving me at an impasse. My backup plan involved contacting Leonard to request his participation in a prenatal DNA test and offer to cover the expenses. Unfortunately, he had blocked me and deleted his Facebook account, complicating matters further. In a moment of determination, I decided to visit his workplace in hopes of catching him there. When I arrived, he initially attempted to ignore me, and after a moment, he approached with a tone dripping with disdain, inquiring about my presence. I insisted that I had an important matter to discuss, and despite his disinterest, I pressed on, revealing that I was pregnant and stating that he was the father. His reaction was visceral. He responded with dismissiveness, exclaiming that I would not trap him with a baby, as if I were manipulating the situation. I was quick to counter, telling him to pay close attention to what I was saying. I made it abundantly clear that if he did not take the necessary steps to arrange and finance a paternity test, I would be left with no choice but to report his inappropriate actions to the HR department at his workplace. I presented him with the contact information for the clinic, emphasizing that I expected him to comply within 48 hours, otherwise I would take action regarding his behavior. On that pivotal evening, Leonard made the choice to unblock my phone and send a text message that would ultimately alter the course of our lives. He informed me that he had scheduled an appointment for the following Tuesday at 10 a.m. Recognizing that I had the day off from work, we both made our way to the clinic office. Despite the gravity of the situation, an uncomfortable silence enveloped us as we arrived. After a brief wait, the clinic staff called Leonard into the examination room first. They collected his saliva sample, an essential part of the process. Soon after, it was my turn, and I sat nervously as they drew a blood sample, a procedure that felt monumental given the circumstances. The anticipation was almost unbearable as we waited for a week to receive the results. However, the weight of that wait was rendered insignificant when the news finally arrived. Leonard was not the father. Overwhelmed with joy and relief, I fell to my knees, pouring my heart out in gratitude to the Lord for blessing my husband and me with another precious child that we had longed for. The excitement bubbled within me, and I was eager to share this wonderful news with Ree. However, the unfortunate reality was that I had no means of contacting him, as he had blocked my number, and I was completely unaware of his current whereabouts. At that time, my relationship with my children was strained. They were still avoiding me and communicated with me sparingly. I decided to reach out to both my daughter and my son, explaining that there was something very important I needed to discuss with them. I asked if they could arrange a three-way call. My daughter, curious and perhaps a bit apprehensive, repeatedly probed for details regarding the nature of the call. I insisted that I would reveal the information when we were all together on the call. Eventually, we set up the call, and I delivered the good news that we were expecting a new baby. However, instead of sharing in my joy, both of them responded with tension and unkindness. They quickly jumped to conclusions, suspecting that the baby could not possibly belong to anyone but Leonard. I reassured them with confidence, stating that I was certain the child was their father's. My son, seeking clarification, asked how I could be so confident in my assertion. I explained that I had calculated my certainty based on the estimated conception date. At that moment, I didn't have the actual conception date to reference, and I opted not to mention the DNA test with Leonard, choosing instead to clarify my position in this way. However, this only seemed to escalate the situation. My daughter leveled a serious accusation at me, claiming that I had intentionally trapped her father by getting pregnant. I found myself taken aback and questioned her how that could even be possible when all these events had taken place before he even knew of my involvement with Leonard. She reiterated her point, accusing me of deliberately getting pregnant by her father in the event that he would discover my affair, thinking that the baby was my way of ensnaring him back into my life. I refuted her claims with all the conviction I could muster, emphasizing how absurd her accusations were and reminded her that her father and I had been trying for years to conceive. After a lengthy and emotionally charged discussion, they reluctantly agreed to talk to their father and encourage him to call me. I spent that night in anxious anticipation, hoping for Ray's call, but when the morning passed without any communication, my heart sank. Just after 1 p.m. The next day, I received an unexpected call from Ray's attorney. She left a voicemail, and I was quick to return her call. During our conversation, she explained that she was representing her client and had been made aware of my pregnancy, along with my claim that the baby belonged to him. As the words sank in, I struggled to contain my emotions and began to cry uncontrollably. I pleaded with her to facilitate a conversation with my husband directly. The attorney, while sympathetic and understanding of my distress, remained firm in her professionalism. Once I managed to compose myself, she informed me that my husband was requesting a paternity test to confirm the baby's parentage. I readily agreed, even volunteering to arrange the test as soon as possible and offering to cover the costs from my savings. The attorney stressed that I needed to set up the appointment and mentioned that her client would provide his saliva sample at a time when I would not be present. I consented to these terms, but that night I was consumed with tears, grappling with the unsettling reality that Ray believed I could deceive him about something so vital. It was difficult for me to understand why he wasn't willing to accompany me to the appointment. The paternity test was conducted as planned, and just earlier this morning, the results were finally delivered. To my relief, they conclusively confirmed that Ray is indeed the father, a fact I had already been certain about. Yet, receiving the official results brought about an immense mental relief that I had not anticipated. Now, I am determined to move forward from the terrible nightmare that Leonard had drawn me into in the past, and I am eager to rebuild the trust and relationships within my family that had been so severely tested. I want to take a moment to express my deep gratitude for the unwavering support and encouragement that Em has offered me during this challenging period in my life. The kindness and understanding have been invaluable as I navigate through this difficult time. I've received numerous requests for an update, prompting me to share how my family and I have been progressing. While we are still very much a work in progress, each day brings us a little closer to rebuilding the family we once were before Leonard's selfish actions caused significant harm, compounded by my own errors. Firstly, I want to address the painful reality of my divorce from Ree. Despite my heartfelt pleas and the emotional weight of sharing the news that I was pregnant with his child, he made the decision to proceed with the divorce. I had held on to high hopes that the DNA test would confirm him as the father, eagerly anticipating a moment where we could come together, where he would hold me in his arms and reassure me that everything would eventually be okay. Regrettably, that ideal moment never materialized. Instead, we found ourselves in a meeting at his attorney's office, a session that was formally recorded. During that meeting, he reiterated his decision to move forward with the divorce and expressed a desire for us to shift into a constructive co-parenting relationship. Overcome with emotion, I had to ask for a moment to collect myself, and once I composed myself, we moved on to discuss custody arrangements. Ree proposed that we share custody time equally, yet I expressed a strong preference for him to have full custody. This revelation led me to tears once more. Ultimately, we finalized our divorce, dividing assets and establishing shared custody of our young child. The agreement included a year of alimony and ongoing child support, with Ree also committing to cover 50% of the taxes, insurance, and utilities for our family home for the next 2 years. This arrangement was crucial in ensuring a safe and secure environment for our newborn. In late January, our precious little one entered the world, and his arrival has been nothing short of miraculous. After 15 long years filled with trying and hoping, he has not only blessed our lives but has also played a vital role in reconnecting our family. The bond between my children, Libby and Craig, has returned to its former strength, and they have embraced their little brother wholeheartedly. In fact, Libby was present with me in the delivery room during the birth, which made it an incredibly special moment. Since our baby's birth, both Libby and Craig have been coming home from college every weekend, eagerly taking turns to hold and care for the baby. Ree has also maintained a significant presence in my life since the birth. He comes directly from work to spend time with us, staying until I put the baby down for the night. Just yesterday, he surprised me with takeout dinner for the two of us. While we didn't share the meal together, this gesture marked a positive shift in our relationship. Currently, we are on friendly terms, and we have consciously avoided discussing the affair or the circumstances surrounding our divorce. Following my therapist's advice, I have refrained from pressuring him or discussing the potential for reconciliation. This approach seems to be yielding positive results as I gradually feel myself regaining the love and connection with my husband. I have applied a similar strategy when it comes to my interactions with Libby and Craig. I am committed to nurturing these relationships, understanding that if I ever have the chance to win Ree back, whether as a husband or a life partner, I will do everything in my power to never jeopardize our bond again. My family means the world to me, and I am dedicated to showing them how much I value and cherish our time together. At this moment, I don't have any additional updates to share. While I wish that things could return to how they once were, I recognize that this may not be feasible. Instead, I am focusing on appreciating the wonderful aspects of my current situation. This may be my final post unless Ree and I decide to officially reconcile. Should that happen, I will be sure to return to share the joyous news with everyone. Once again, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all who have supported me throughout this journey. Now, shifting gears, I am eager to share another story that has been weighing on my mind. Story 2. In February, my husband, who is 33, and I, at 31, celebrated a year of marriage. Shortly after our anniversary, he had to embark on a critical business trip to the UK that lasted for 3 weeks. Unfortunately, the situation evolved, and his trip was extended, leaving us facing unforeseen challenges. I feel the need to express what has been bothering me lately, and I could really use an outside perspective on this matter. I will try to summarize the situation succinctly, as it has been a source of concern for me. The situation took an unfortunate turn when my husband and his team faced unexpected delays that forced them to remain in the UK for an additional 2 weeks to finalize their business deal. This marked a significant moment in our relationship, as it was the first period of separation we had experienced since we became a couple 6 years ago. The emotional turbulence I experienced was intense and multifaceted. I have always had a tendency to become overly clingy and emotional, especially in times of uncertainty, which is a characteristic that can make it challenging for those close to me. Alongside these personality traits, I also contend with mental health challenges that amplify my insecurities and paranoia, particularly regarding the unsettling thought that my husband might be unfaithful. The fact that he extended his trip by another fortnight only intensified those fears. During this time apart, I took it upon myself to confirm his whereabouts, even going so far as to call his office to verify that his team was still engaged in their work abroad. It was a tumultuous period filled with anxiety. In an unpredictable turn of events, I developed a friendship with our neighbor. One evening, after sharing a movie, things escalated in a way I had not anticipated. Although I recognized that I was allowing the situation to spiral out of my control, my worry about my husband's circumstances overwhelmed me. As our neighbor became more physically affectionate, my anxiety kicked in, prompting me to halt any further progression. The next day, however, the thought lingered in my mind, and out of a desire to explore what might unfold, I made the decision to revisit the encounter. This decision led to a series of meetings that quickly evolved into a full-blown affair. Whether our interactions took place at my residence or his, I could not shake the underlying anxiety about my husband. Surprisingly, I found myself devoid of an overwhelming sense of guilt, which troubled me even more and raised questions about my character and moral compass. My life took a chaotic turn when my husband returned home unexpectedly in early March, seeking to surprise me. His intention, while perhaps noble in theory, lacked consideration for the reality of the state of our home. Upon his arrival, he was greeted by utter chaos, empty beer cans, snack wrappers scattered carelessly across the bed, and dirty laundry strewn about, reminiscent of a disaster zone. In retrospect, I suppose his shock was understandable, given that I had not prepared for his sudden reappearance. If I had known, I would have tidied up, especially the bed, which was a glaring indication of something amiss. When he inquired about the disarray, I feigned a casual explanation, claiming that I had merely hosted friends to alleviate my loneliness. We had played games, shared drinks, and nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. His reaction was hard to read. I wasn't entirely certain whether he accepted my explanation. Nevertheless, he began cleaning up, which I inwardly resisted, knowing that there could be incriminating evidence hidden among the mess. And indeed, there was a bag in the trash that held a used condom wrapper and a toothbrush. My heart plummeted, and I felt my hands trembling as it dawned on me how precarious the situation had become. In a moment of surreal clarity, I managed to keep my composure and informed my husband that the friends I had invited included 2 couples, subtly hinting at the intimacy that had unfolded. His gaze lingered on me, revealing a blend of disbelief and confusion. In that charged moment, I felt the weight of my secrets crashing down around me, and, compelled by the gravity of the circumstances, I confessed to the affair with our neighbor. The transformation of my husband's expression was unmistakable. It shifted through layers of disappointment, pain, anger, and fear in a matter of seconds. What came over me next is difficult to articulate, but I found myself on my knees, pleading for forgiveness and a second chance. Deep down, however, I wrestled with uncertainty about whether I truly deserved that chance. I recognized that I had made a significant mistake, and I attempted to clarify that the affair was a momentary lapse, driven by my vulnerability during his absence. Yet, he struggled to accept my account. He speculated that my involvement with the neighbor might have extended beyond a singular instance, suggesting a deeper betrayal. In our painful discussion, my husband laid out 3 specific conditions for the possibility of moving forward. First, he insisted that the affair was an isolated incident. Second, he required reassurance that it was not premeditated but rather a foolish decision made in a moment of weakness, possibly influenced by alcohol. Lastly, he sought confirmation that no romantic feelings existed between us. He articulated the seriousness of the situation, indicating that if these conditions were unmet, he would choose to leave. Additionally, he expressed a need to review my phone conversations with the other man over the past few months to ensure there were no indications of romance or plans. However, in a moment of reckless choice, I had deleted those conversations without any backup, leaving him with no option but to rely on my word. The knowledge that he might have discovered those messages only deepened the gravity of the turmoil we faced. It might have been the impending conclusion of our marriage, a thought that weighs heavily on my mind. My instinct tells me that he may be better off without me, which is why I am seriously contemplating the possibility of initiating a divorce. In recent discussions, I have learned that he has already sought the counsel of a lawyer, which adds urgency to my decision. I would prefer to take the initiative and file the papers myself, rather than wait for him to serve me. My feelings about this situation are complex. I know that I have wronged him, but I firmly believe that there should be a way to navigate the tumultuous waters of a relationship, even in the face of significant challenges. Many couples confront difficult circumstances daily and still manage to preserve their connections. I am genuinely open to hearing your thoughts and eager to receive your perspective on this matter. To provide an update, I wanted to share what has transpired since my last communication. I am truly grateful for the advice and support I have received from this community during this challenging period. The ability to connect with others who understand my plight has been invaluable. After considerable reflection and a series of heartfelt discussions with my husband, we agreed that we needed to sit down together once again to address the issues at hand. It became evident to me that honesty was critical, which meant I had to disclose the truth about the affair that occurred while he was away on a business trip. This was undoubtedly a difficult conversation, but I believed it was essential for both of us to have a clear understanding of the situation. During this emotional exchange, I took full responsibility for my actions. I admitted my mistakes and recognized that I had not taken his feelings into account. It was an intense moment filled with raw emotion, yet I felt that it was necessary to achieve complete transparency between us. My husband reacted with a complex mix of feelings. He expressed deep hurt, anger, and confusion as he tried to process everything I was revealing. Realizing the weight of what I had shared, he asked for some time to think things over, and I agreed, recognizing that he needed space to come to terms with our new reality. In the days that followed, my husband reached a poignant decision and shared his thoughts with me. He conveyed that his pain stemmed not only from the affair itself but also from the betrayal that accompanied it. The lies and deception had shattered the trust that was foundational to our marriage. He acknowledged that rebuilding that trust would be a long and arduous journey. Consequently, he asked me to leave the house, explaining that he needed time to contemplate our future apart. However, I felt compelled to decline his request, grounded in the reality that I am still his wife and hold legal rights to the house we share. I couldn't simply vacate without a strategic plan in place. Currently, the atmosphere between us is charged, and emotions remain at a fever pitch. My husband has attempted various strategies to persuade me to leave, ranging from expressing intense anger and having outbursts to resorting to guilt-tripping and manipulation. Despite the escalating tension, I have reached a point of resolve where I feel I have nothing left to lose. I have communicated clearly that I will not be moving out. While I understand he needs time to process everything and make decisions about our future, it is clear to me that he will have to navigate this period with me still present in the home. I do not want there to be any misunderstanding. I deeply regret the pain I have caused him, and I am fully prepared to take responsibility for my actions. I do not believe that this moment should mark the conclusion of our story together. I have much to contribute to our relationship, and I want to clarify that my focus is entirely on our situation, not on outside distractions. I recognize that the road ahead will be long and fraught with challenges, but I am more than willing to invest the necessary effort to work toward rebuilding our trust. If that is indeed what is required to salvage our marriage, I am prepared. I hold a steadfast belief that every couple encounters unique challenges, and with mutual effort and commitment, it is possible to navigate and overcome even the most difficult circumstances. While I remain hopeful for an opportunity to mend our relationship, I am also preparing for the possibility that my husband may ultimately conclude that parting ways is the best course of action for us. Once again, I wish to express my sincere gratitude for the support, advice, and understanding I have received from this community. Having a safe space to share my thoughts and seek guidance during such a trying time has been incredibly meaningful to me. I will continue to provide updates as developments unfold, and I kindly ask that you keep us in your thoughts and send positive energy our way. In a subsequent update, I regret to share that my husband has formally served me with divorce papers. This news has been a devastating blow, shattering any remaining hope I had clung to that we might reconcile. Despite the fact that we are still residing under the same roof, there is an unmistakable tension that permeates our home. He has taken to avoiding me, treating me as if I am contagious. The reality of the situation has set in, and I find myself grappling with the profound implications of his decision to move forward with the divorce, all while navigating the complexities of our current living arrangement. My family members have been informed about the current turmoil in my life, and it is completely understandable that they have not been supportive of the actions and decisions I have made. Both my parents and my in-laws have voiced their strong criticism regarding my choices, which has led to a significant strain in our relationships. As a result, we are currently not on speaking terms, leaving me to navigate this difficult situation entirely on my own. This solitude has proven to be incredibly challenging, both emotionally and mentally. The thought of potentially facing a divorce fills me with fear. It is not just the prospect of societal shame that troubles me, but also the profound impact that such a decision would inevitably have on my daily life. I fully acknowledge the mistakes I have made in this situation, however, I find myself paralyzed by the fear of being alone once again. The daunting prospect of having to support myself independently has likely influenced my intense reaction when my husband confronted me about leaving our home. Despite the turmoil, I do care deeply for him, and I am beginning to come to terms with the fact that I must take responsibility for my actions. The mere thought of our relationship ending is painful to confront, yet I recognize that it may be a consequence I need to face. A strong desire to start a family has always been within me, and lately, I have been experiencing feelings of illness, which offers a glimmer of hope in that regard. I understand that, given the current circumstances, starting a family might not be feasible right now. However, I genuinely believe that my husband would not abandon his child, should that possibility ever arise. This brings forth the notion that perhaps having a baby could serve as a solution to our issues. I am acutely aware that eventually, people in our small town will learn about our situation, and that is an issue I will have to confront when the time comes. Presently, I am preparing to head out to the lab to take a pregnancy test. Although I have tried home kits, they have all returned negative results. The anxiety I feel is overwhelming, and the mere thought of what might happen if the test results indicate that I am not actually pregnant fills me with dread. It raises the terrifying question of whether this is truly the end for us. As I approach this critical moment, I cannot help but feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on me. Unfortunately, the test results confirm that I am not pregnant.
Don't forget to subscribe, like, and click on the little bell icon for notifications of new stories.